Fucking
What?
fuckity fuck. Okay, Twitch, you get to all listen to me do this all over again. We're going to do this all over again. For flying fuck on a stick. I knew I was going to forget, you know. See, Earl, you reminded me. I
freaking told you.
I know.
And you're like, oh, I don't need to do that right now.
Okay.
Doesn't matter.
Again. Everyone cough.
Cough.
Right, take two. Welcome everyone to Transpicuous Views. It is a Sunday morning show that we're going to be doing a special presentation on astrology. And I've pulled together a team here from right across the planet to sit down and discuss this. We've touched on it in multiple shows now on the Unfuck It discussions, but we're going to actually have a show to deeply get into this, to talk about what the fuck is going on. And we're going to talk about the various aspects of astrology that the vast majority of people have no clue about. Hold on, guys. So, yes, we're coming to you live from all over the world. We have Jules is in Australia. Amina is in Malaysia. Megan is on the east coast of Canada. I'm in Malta. And, of course, our producer, John, is way over there in Edmonton, Alberta. It's like the middle of the night where he is. Sorry, John. We're going to start off. We're going to get into this discussion. And I want to get into the discussion of breaking it down for people to get simply. Because, like I said, everyone gets the fact I'm an Aries or I'm a Virgo. Everyone understands their their sun sign, I guess I should say. But it's much deeper than that. And what we're going to do is talk about, to start off with anyways, is get into an explanation of what is actually involved in all these signs, in these charts, and give some definitions to some of the words that I know you guys are going to be using as you start talking about these things, so that people have at least a basic understanding of what we're discussing. So who wants to go first with the definitions and give us a basic rundown? Come on, guys. Don't be shy.
No one's going to start, so I'll start. I've actually just gone through the chronology of astrology and the rise and fall of astrology, and you know, currently it's a bit of a pseudoscience. It's a bit of a quack science. Now it's not really taken seriously, but you know, since the dawning of time, or since humankind, you know, we've been looking up at the stars and tracking the movements of the stars. So I'm just going to quickly share my screen and see if I can work this out. Dun, 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 dun. So I can see all you lovely people, and hopefully you can see my PowerPoint.
Yep.
Yeah. So this is taken from a book. Like, I've kind of haven't really been too close to astrology in the last 20 years. So I'm referring to books which are like, you know, 30 or 50 years old. But the chronology, you know, starting from 15,000 BC, and, you know, it was observed in Babylon in 6000 BC through to the Egyptian sort of period. And then you've got the Indian style of, or Eastern astrology as well. So people all over the world from different cultures have developed their own systems of astrology over time. And it starts to get really interesting when the church is involved. So I'll just skip down through all the BC parts, and hopefully Danny can just put this up in the notes after the show. So basically it was introduced into Greece in 330 BC or thereabouts, and that's when we start to take on the Greek archetypes. So a lot of these planets and signs are ruled by gods, or Roman gods. That's where the name of the planets come from. There's also their Greek counterparts, and as well as Mesopotamian, Sumerian gods as well. So this is where you start to paint a picture of what the planets mean and their signs. So Jupiter is the Greek version of Zeus, expansion, etc., etc. You've got Saturn, which is the Greek representation of Kronos, which is the father of time, old father time, his restriction, blah, 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 blah. So we'll just go a little bit forward, and you've got the Arabian and the Persian sort of astrology as well. So there are all different types of astrology and systems taken on board. And this is where it gets interesting, because you want to touch on specifically Saturn-Pluto cycles. So in the 15th to 16th century, it was a Renaissance period. Astrology was held in high regard. It was taught in universities. There was no difference between astrology and astronomy and medicine. It was all one kind of science. From 1300s or thereabouts, and I may get these dates wrong, so just bear with me. And the interesting part, the fall of astrology was due to a couple of popes really resisted it and refuted it. And one of those popes is Pope Sixtus V in the 16th century. So basically he denounced astrology pretty much overnight. And part of the Catholic Church kind of took hold of that. And there was a lot of infighting and controversy about the use of astrology. I guess its downfall came with the Spanish Inquisition and also Isaac Newton and Newtonian physics. That's when it really kind of fell in a way. It was which is quite interesting. You had Newtonian physics come in. You had the heliocentric model. Pardon me, my dogs are barking. And from there, I've just gone through each of the periods in there. So, and then we go into the parts of the AD, or and we've got the discovery of Uranus in 1781. We've got the discovery of Neptune in 1846 and the discovery of Pluto in around 1930. So really, traditional astrology, Saturn was the final frontier. He was the final observable planet. So a lot of the signs are only ruled by Sun, Moon, Mercury, Venus, Mars, Jupiter, and then Saturn. So I'll hand over to Megan, because she'll be able to talk about the Last Supper painting.
Oh, yes, I want to get into that.
I think that would be really good, a really good step in from here, just to give you a flavour of what the planets represent.
I was actually going to put my hand up and say, can I do the Last Supper now? This might be a really good time.
Yes, yes.
Okay, I will
pull up the screen share.
All right. Okay. So this is kind of a little bit of a fun way to look at the signs, and tying in with what Jules had said about one of the major cycles with Saturn and Pluto ties back to the Renaissance period. And we're kind of going through a very similar thing right now with the astrology. Back in the Renaissance, astrology wasn't really, accepted socially. You were persecuted if you talked about this kind of stuff. The Catholic Church was really big against that. So it's a really ancient knowledge, and the really, really smart guys knew it needed to be preserved. That's why guys like Da Vinci hid astrology and metaphysics and hermetics. Hermetics are a big thing everywhere. So if you really know your astrology, this painting is pretty blatant. So over here, you have Aries. Aries is the beginning. If you look closely, it's 4 groups of 3, right? Those are your seasons. That's what makes astrology what it is. It's tropically anyway. It is the definition of the seasons. With the sun in the middle, because heliocentrically we all go around the sun, and this is like how we've, even though the earth is anchored here, this is how it works, like in a hermetic way with astrology. The sun is in the middle always. And if you look, he's red and blue, masculine, feminine, red shift, blue shift, like he's one, he's unity. If you want to go Fibonacci with it, he's the one. These guys, the planets, so this is the spring. The true new year, not the Gregorian calendar new year that we all kind of pin everything around with January 1st. Like that's just a man-made system. Like they have us on, so I'm going to get ranty sometimes through here, but we're on like this skewed version of time that really keeps us fucked up, and it keeps us away from our humanness. Like it's really awful. So true time, true New Year's, the spring equinox. So you have Aries. Aries is ruled by Mars. It's known for its aggression, right? Look at this guy. Like, he is so aggressively stanced on the table. If I was looking at him, like, he's ready to take off. He's ready to go. He's got, like, that short kind of Roman-style haircut. Roman, the militia, Mars. It's all tied in together. Second, you've got your Taurus back here. It's kind of hard to tell. A little bit pink. Venus is like a feminine, soft, flowy color. This one gets a little bit more abstract, but if you look closely, you see that his hand is touching this guy. Well, this guy is Cancer. Cancer is the cardinal water sign, so he's about the force of our emotions, and he is holding him back because he's stable. He's fixed earth. And one thing that's associated with like Taurus energy, because it's ruled by Venus, and Venus is how we value other people and like our monetary system. So it's about value. So he is like valuing his emotions enough to like pull him back and not fucking stab Virgo, who can be a bit of a nitpick sometimes. Well, no, that's just an astrology joke, but still, he's reaching out and touching like something valuable and concrete, right? You have Gemini here. Gemini rules 2 parts of the body, the lungs and the hands. Dude literally has his hands like this over his lungs. Like it's right there. So you have a season here. Cardinal, fixed, mutable. This is the cycle that ripples through from the beginning. Cardinal, fixed, mutable. Cardinal, or cardinal, fixed, mutable. Cardinal, fixed, mutable. It goes on and on and on. Each solstice and equinox is ruled by a cardinal sign. So the very first day of Aries is the very first moment of spring. The very first day of Cancer, like 0 degrees of Cancer, lines up with the summer solstice. Autumn equinox, winter solstice. Cardinal energies are known as initiators. So when you're dealing with a cardinal planet or a cardinal sign, you're dealing with like a force of energy, like a blast. And when Danny was talking about the magnetics and how early in January they were like going off the charts, we had a lot of really strong Capricorn energy. Capricorn is cardinal earth. So you have like these big it's all so interconnected. Cardinal moves into a mutable energy, or sorry, not mutable, fixed. It's really early. You have your fixed energy. The fixed energy is very stable. It doesn't change. It's solid. This holds your seasons together. So this brings a new season, and this holds it in place. Next, you have the mutable energy. Mutable is shifting. It's changing. It breaks things apart so that new can come in. So you have the beginning of the season, the middle of the season, and then when the season kind of shifts and turns into the next one. This is literally what astrology is pinned on. It's just a natural cycle, and it's a giant spiral, and you see it right down to a cellular level, right up to a galactic level. It's the same thing. It's just a giant sine wave that flows. You have your equinox. You go up to your solstice. Let's use the table. You do your equinox up to your solstice. Then you go down again to your other equinox, down to your solstice, back up to your equinox. That's just what the path of the sun does. It's what everything literally in the universe does. So then you have your Cancer here. He's very emotional. He's got a knife. kind of paints its own self. He's a cardinal energy. Again, it's a forward thrust, and he's emotionally driven. We have Leo, the sun, ruled by the sun. The sun is the only guy touching the table, as is Leo. It shows that there's a connection. It's subtle, but it's there. He's kind of leaning there like he owns the place. He's looking back on everyone. He's not kind of part of the crowd. He's separate from the crowd. He's kind of on a different level, right? The sun is really quite, a pinnacle in astrology. Then you have Virgo, the virgin, the chaste maiden, and literally the only female in the picture. Then you have Libra, the autumn equinox. He's literally a balance beam. Libra is the scales. You have Scorpio, got a little stinging tail for us all to see. He's also ruled by Mars, like hermetically, just like Aries is. So he's got like a bit of that, glowering face like that. He's got he's not somebody you want to meet in an alley. And if you saw Mars and Pluto energy coming together in an astrology language way, that's same energy, not energy you want to meet in a back alley. Next you have Sagittarius. This is your fall mutable sign. If you look really closely at him, he is bending over, but he is clearly way fucking larger than everybody else. So Sagittarius is ruled by Jupiter, which is literally the biggest planet. Its influence in astrology is to expand upon things, which is why it gets a reputation for good luck, because if it's in a favorable aspect, it can make it, expand and grow. So he's ruled by, the big, giant Jupiter, and he literally is a fucking giant. Next, you have Capricorn. Capricorn's ruled by Saturn. It's very straightforward and businesslike. Like, it's not a sign known for playing around or levity. Saturn is a fucking intense guy. So if you look, he is the only guy in this picture that has both short hair and a clean shaven face. From a modern perspective, his attire is more like a business suit to me in comparison, because it's one solid color. Like a suit is uniform, or a uniform, like a militia uniform, or just any kind of, it's all he's like that too. He's not a mishmash of colors. These guys have their capes draped in different ways. He's just that's Saturn. If you really zoom in, that's gonna pixelate, but he hasn't touched his drink. He's here to work. He's not here to socialize and party. But Jupiter is, and so is Pisces. Pisces rules addictions, right? The guy at the end of the table. He doesn't know what the fuck's going on. His glass is clearly empty, and there's some drinks in the bottom of it. But in the middle, you have Aquarius. So Aquarius is ruled by Uranus. My rule of thumb with Aquarius energy is there is no rule of thumb. There just isn't. So Uranus is very electric, and it's sudden, and it's so unpredictable, and it literally orbits this way rather than this way, like a normal planet. It's just fuck you guys, I'm gonna go different. So look at his hand. He's pointing, his hand is kind of showing up the way that Uranus. I know they didn't know about Uranus then, but they knew something was up with that energy. They knew it was different. And he kind of looks like either some old homeless guy that you would see under the bridge, or he looks like some really fucking wise Merlin type mystical sage. You know what I mean? You just don't know with this guy what's up with him. And then you have Pisces at the end, who is very a knowing and connected sign, but it also is the sign of addictions, and it's in a different fucking reality. So he's well, I don't know. I just want more wine. But you can see, again, the whole red shift, blue shift. You have the top, which connects with your crown chakra. You want to get into that kind of stuff, which is a blue or the ultraviolet kind of energy. And then at the bottom, you have your root chakra, which is red. This is the start of the year. This is the end of the year. Positive, negative, electric, magnetic. It's all here. Cardinal, fixed, mutable. Birth, growth, death. Beginning, middle, end. You can't think of anything that doesn't fit in that pattern because everything fits in that pattern. Everything has a beginning and everything has a middle and everything has an end. It can't not work that way. It just is. It's a universal law if you think about it.
It's awesome. And I love that. I love when we take something that is, for example, how many of us have stared at this picture? We've seen this picture. We've studied it in art class. We've studied it in history class, etc. And to look at it with a different set of eyes is really, really interesting to me. So, cardinal, fixed, and mutable are three of the terms which you've really well explained. Those are three of the terms that we hear all the time. Now, some of the other words that we talk about is, for example, the ascendant. So the ascendant, my assumption is the planet that is coming into.
So technically what the ascendant is at any given morning, if you look to your eastern point where the horizon is, the degree of the zodiac that is literally rising in the eastern horizon at that moment is the ascendant. So
when you talk about birth charts, then, so for example, when you talk about doing someone's birth chart, we talk about, okay, they have their sun sign, for I'm Aries, right? Then the ascendant is exactly that. Whatever is literally on the eastern horizon and is just rising up at the time of their birth.
So exactly. So here, let me just whip up a quick example. I'm gonna very quickly here open a chart of the moment on my phone so I can just like bam, because I'm still a little bleary-eyed here. So right now, if anybody was having a birthday right now, it'd be typically like, ooh, I'm a Pisces. Like that's, the basic knowledge. Everything is sitting somewhere. And if you want to know in the relation to where you are, in astrology, we put it in a thing called a house. So right now in my location, if I look to the east, 17 degrees of Aquarius is rising on the eastern horizon right now. So if I were born right now, I would be an Aquarius rising. That would be my rising sun. It would be the doorway to my chart. So it's a rising sign because it's literally rising, right? Because the zodiac is moving. Or it would be known as your ascendant. Ascendant is the upward motion. And it's just one of the four major gates within a chart. It's the beginning. It corresponds with Aries in the spring equinox.
Okay, so is there, pardon me, sorry guys, I've got a really bad throat this morning, everyone. I'm going to apologize for all the throat clearing and coughing. It is what it is. Is there a descendant then as well? And does that play a part?
Yep, the descendant's the exact opposite point. So we just said 17 Aquarius would be what's on the eastern horizon. 17 Leo, which is the exact opposite point on the 360 wheel, would be setting on my western horizon. So my descendant, where I'm born right now, would be 17 Leo. The descendant is the gateway to your 7th house because an astrology chart looks kind of like a pizza or a pie. So 6 houses on the top and 6 houses on the bottom. The equator in the middle is the horizon. So ascendant, descendant, entry to my chart, and then the descendant, the door to the 7th house, which is where we find relationships and other people. This is how other people enter your chart. If that makes sense.
Interesting. I asked the question about descendant. I've never heard of that. Like when anyone is, like I said, I've had my chart done a couple of times, years and years and years ago, and no one's ever said anything about a descendant. But it makes logical sense to me if the ascendant is there, that the descendant would also be there.
Yes, it's the exact opposite point. So then you have quadrants within a chart. So the opposite point is, or not the opposite point, the other, the vertical axis is the midheaven and the nadir or the IC. This is, so the midheaven in your chart would correspond with wherever today is the spot in the sky that the sun is going to sit at high noon. Wherever that is, even though the sun's not there at this moment, that's where my midheaven is. That's the highest point that the sun is going to reach the chart in that day. So the MC, the midheaven, is like the peak of your chart. It's the pinnacle, right? So where I'm born right now, 7 degrees of Sagittarius is right at, that's interesting. That's my Saturn degree, actually. Anyway, that is right up in like where that is, that's where my noon will be later today. Even though it might not actually be 12 o'clock, because really only on the autumn and the spring equinox does everything sit in kind of perfection for one day. And those are so important. Anyway, the opposite point, which is, you know, when the sun is like diametrically opposed from that high pinnacle, is the lowest point. It's the root. It's your IC. This is, it represents your 4th house. So it's like your home, where you feel safe and secure, your childhood, your roots, right? It's where you like, you ground down and you anchor in. The midheaven is where you go out. It's where you venture the world. It's your legacy. It's your career. It's how you're received. It's ruled by Capricorn and Saturn, right? Like, it's that public image. And that's interesting with all the Capricorn and Saturn. That's why I mention it. But I have a theory. The IC of these 4 really pivotal points in your chart in astrology, the IC is kind of like the most disregarded. Oh yeah, it's, you know, it's the chart to your 4th house. It's like your family. It's your home. Well, yeah, but it's more than that. Like, it's your childhood. I think it's like your past lives. It's like, it's your roots. It's where you feel like safe and secure. It's where you pivot out into the world, right?
Okay,
I think this is a point that linchpins all your charts from past lives together. Sorry, that's my theory.
Absolutely. Well, what I want to do is this, because again, we're using terminology that people are not going to necessarily, houses, etc. So is there, just, can you guys throw up a chart? And someone put up a chart, and then you can explain what this is like as far as planets. Now, you know, you guys were working on Queen Elizabeth's chart, because you guys thought that was a really good one.
I don't want to like monopolize the conversation.
I mean, is that you who got the Queen Elizabeth's chart? I couldn't remember who it was who pulled that up.
Yeah, I was looking at Queen
us.
Elizabeth's chart, and Megan, have you got it?
Yeah, give me 2 seconds here.
Okay, because we were looking at well, one thing, she's a very old person, and she's in power, so she's got a long life that we can examine. So that's really good. And then and the other important thing is that she's got interesting transitions coming up, and planets are transiting points in her chart, which is really going to affect her, the United Kingdom, maybe the setup of monarchy, all the different countries that are under the Commonwealth. I think that's going to be quite influential. So we should look at her chart.
Okay.
While Megan's bringing that up, I just want to talk about just some of the Pluto-Saturn conjunctions. So generally, we've got the sun and moon. We've got a new moon, which is a conjunction of the sun and the moon, and it waxes, and then it gets full at opposition, and then it wanes again. Each pair of planets has their own new moon and full moon cycles. So that's basically when they're together, it's their new synodic cycle. When they're in opposition, if you can see down here, opposition, it means that they're opposite, and that's a hard aspect. And if they're square as well, so if you look at that circle at 360 degrees, you're looking at conjunction, then you're looking at the first square, like your 9 o'clock or a 3 o'clock position on a clock, your 6 o'clock position at the clock, and your 9 o'clock position at the clock to the 12. Okay, so these major aspects happen with each pair of planets. Pluto and Saturn, it's generally approximately, on average, a 33-year cycle. It can be a little bit shorter than that or a bit lengthier than that, because Pluto's orbit is really quite erratic. It's really elliptical, so it doesn't always work like clockwork. But generally, Pluto and Saturn's like businessman, it's corporations, it represents police, it represents monarchies. Basically, when Pluto, the destroyer or the transformative planet, comes into contact with Saturn on these critical points, basically empires fall and are rebuilt, monarchies fall, countries are redistributed. Major things happen in these cycles, and we can go back through history and we can have a look at,
And that's the cycle we've been talking
World
about.
War One, World War Two, exactly. World War Two. After World War Two, like the formation of about 30 different nations and different alliances and things like that. We had an opposition at 9/11 was an opposition. It's times of action and war. So generally, those two things signify recession and war and transformation at a generational sort of collective level. So anyway,
33 years.
it's about between 31 and 38 years, but they're part of a much larger cycle as well, because Pluto, it takes like 248 years to do a full cycle of the zodiac. So anyway, I digress, and Megan's got the chart
I think
up.
first of all we have to see we have to explain the glyphs, because there are circles with glyphs inside, and we need to explain what they are, because they represent planets and zodiacs. So maybe Megan, you use your cursor. We can either one of us can go through it. Who's got the screen share up?
Megan does. Sorry,
Megan.
Megan. You.
If one of you have a better glyph section, I can stop sharing until we look at the chart.
No, let's look at the chart.
Oh, look at the chart? Okay.
Okay. I can bring up something else if you like.
You got all the glyphs?
The glyphs?
I've got the glyphs.
Yeah, okay. That's a good idea then.
All right. Okay. So I just work out this share thing. Sure. All right. So I've chucked everything into an Excel. I haven't got the planetary glyphs. So it starts with Aries in spring, and you can see with the two horns there, they're like ram antlers. And then going into the bull, you've got the circle with the two horns. You've got Gemini, which is the twins, the two hands, the lungs. You've got the crab, which is like a 6 and a 9 on its side. Then you've got the lion, the Leo, Virgo the Virgin, Libra the scales. It's got a line and little dip at the top. Scorpio, Sagittarius, which is the archer. Capricorn, which is the goat fish. So it's like a goat with a fish tail down here. You've got Aquarius just down below, which is the water bearer. So here's the guy pouring a jug of water, a pitcher of water. So you can see the lines which are water. And then you've got the two fish, which symbolize pretty much the 2,000 years of Jesus in that. So it's two fish swimming and circling each other. So I've got the glyphs here. I might actually put up something else later. But as Megan said with the Last Supper, we've got the elements, which are fire, earth, air, water, and they repeat all the way through. So this is really important for the 12 signs. It's divisible in so many different ways. We've got the quadruplicities, or the elements, which is cardinal, fixed, mutable. We've got their ruling planets. We've also got the metals as well, what metal they rule, and the body area. But anyway, here are the glyphs. So hopefully no one's going to retain this, so we may as well go straight to the chart and just talk you through it, I think.
We'll take the reminders of which the glyphs are.
Yeah.
Saying Megan, if she can pull up. chart. We talked about doing my chart as a thing, and then we're like, well, that might be a little bit too much personal information given some of the shit we were talking about on the last show. So we decided, well, let's do Queen Elizabeth's chart, because seriously, she's very, very public. We know exactly when she was born, et cetera, et cetera. And if ever, like you said, long life, we're talking monarchy, we're talking all the control factors. So I think this is going to be damn interesting to see what we have.
Before we jump into her chart, I just want to touch quickly on, because I spoke about the cycle of cardinal fixed mutable and how important that is. Jules touched on how the elements repeat: fire, earth, air, water. And if you look into anything kind of like, a lot of religion, spirituality, if you want to get into like woo or like new age stuff, like a lot of it is elementally based. And it seems very simplistic on the surface, like, ooh, fire and my water, and it's not. It's very complex. It literally ties in with the platonic solids and like atomic cells, and just this is like the elements are so important because scientifically it is everything that our physical world is built with. It's the building blocks. So I just thought this was like a cool little image that I had to just kind of show everybody that it's not like kind of woo, like, you know what I mean? Like there's like some hard science behind this. So, and now we'll go back to the old lizard queen here.
The old lizard queen.
That's what, every time that's what my little guy actually calls her on the money, because he's so used to her fucking queen on the back of the $20 bills. And yeah. But yeah, this is Queen Elizabeth's chart.
Okay, Amina, can you explain to us what we're actually looking at here?
Okay, so this is the Queen's chart, and you can see on the left of it, there is a line that goes all the way to the right. So that line is representing her ascendant and descendant. Okay, so you can see that her ascendant is in the glyph of Capricorn. So it's at 21 degrees, which is very, very interesting for what's going to come up later, because we're seeing the transits of planets hitting that degrees and an eclipse on that degree. So that means the moon's nodes are on that degrees, and so is her north node. That little glyph there is a north node, which is to do with the moon. And there's the north node and the south node, and they're exactly going to be opposite in a year's time. And we've got stuff happening. So we know stuff is going to happen with the Queen over the next coming years. First of all, people don't know whether she is going to pass away, because there's an age thing there, and we know that the government has already planned for that. That's why that.
Or if she's even still alive, I'm just going to be the conspiracy theorist and throw that in there. Just saying.
Yeah. And then. So they have a plan, so that if she does pass away, it's all set. There's a funeral plan, there's a wake, there's a whole system set up. But I see what is really, really important here is that her sun, which is the glyph with the circle in the middle, is at 0 degrees Taurus, and Taurus is very earthly. She's a very down-to-earth type of person. I mean, she holds on to wealth. This is the kind of earth we're talking about. She's a ruler. She holds on to earth, and it's in her 4th house of home and her upbringing. And, she wasn't really in line to be the throne, but we had a situation where, was it King Edward and Wallis Simpson, was it?
A whole bunch of fuckery that all of a sudden turned the whole monarchy like this.
Yeah, and she ended up, quite surprisingly, becoming the monarch. And they had to change the laws as well to put her in place. Now, that happened during Uranus conjunct her sun when she was young. She was starting to appear in public. And Uranus has an 84-year cycle to go around the zodiac. So 84 years later, she is having the same situation. Now, I am hypothesizing, my prediction is that she's going to do something incredibly unusual, or it's going to be a very unusual set of events. Now, Uranus is going to enter Taurus on the 7th of March. That's this year, 2019. So between March and the end of the year, or the beginning January of next year, there's going to be some very unusual things happening with her. So if there's something very unusual, it has to be very unexpected, because Uranus rules unexpected. It rules like the things that you can't see. It's like revolutionary. It's also breaking free. So I think she's going to step down without anyone really knowing. I think she's going to abdicate the throne.
And there's been, I mean, that's been the talk for a long time. There's that has been going for at least since 2010. There's been that talk that she's going to step down. She's going to step down.
But she doesn't. She doesn't. And I think people have given up thinking that she's just going to remain until her death. And the other interesting thing is that if you look at Prince Charles's chart, which we don't have up here, his moon is conjunct her sun 0 degrees Taurus, and it's at the top of his chart. So she's got the sun at the bottom of her chart, and Prince Charles has got the moon at the top of his chart, but at the exact same degree in the same sign. So Uranus is going to come along, and it's going to do something to both of them at the same time. For her, it's in private, and for him, it's in public, because the bottom of the chart is very private, and the top of the chart is very public. So this could happen in March itself, because Uranus is so sudden, it could just happen overnight. Or it could wait until the cycle is almost complete and happen later on in the year. But I've got a feeling it's happening really soon, before her next birthday on the 21st of April. So there's probably going to be an announcement there. And it's a whole flip. We've also got interesting aspects with Prince William, right?
That's
Jules?
just what I was going to ask. I was just going to say, but how does Prince William play into this? Because there's a lot of talk that Charles
His
will
chart
not be
also
next in
fits
line.
in. Yeah, Megan or Jules? Did you? It was Jules, right? You looked at Prince William's chart. I didn't.
Yeah, I was actually just trying to get his birth date, and I didn't have time to put his chart in. But you can just do a quick Google search and then create one.
But it was in 1982.
It was in 1982, and it was about 6 months before the last Pluto-Saturn conjunction. So if
right. So he's at that critical age of 33.
Yeah.
Hmm.
Yeah. Can I just jump in though and screen share, because I just want to give you a feel for what happens in a Pluto-Saturn conjunction, or in aspects when it happens. Hey, I'm just got to bring my Zoom back up again. Good. Right. Okay. All right. So one of the last conjunctions, it happens, say, every 31 to 38 years. This is what happened after World War II, and the last conjunction. A lot happened, basically. And I've got like 3 slides of powers changing and shifting, and kings dying, and new presidents, and all sorts of stuff. So it coincided with the creation of Israel. The Israel state.
Yeah.
Yep. And we also had some major sort of earth-changing events in Russia. An iron meteor, estimated weight of 70 to 300 tons, breaks up about 4.5 kilometres above the Earth and rains down iron meteorites, producing about 200 craters up to 26.6 metres in diameter and 6 metres deep over an area of 12 kilometres by 4 kilometres. A total of 8,000 iron meteorites weighing 28 to 29 tonnes are recovered. So this is the sort of stuff that happens with this kind of
Okay.
connection.
Well, yeah, because what are we seeing right now? We're seeing that right now. Fireballs in the sky have now gone from like once a year to being every week, if sometimes multiple times a week, especially in the last couple of weeks. We've seen they're being seen over England, over Russia, and I've seen a ton of videos over Russia, over Cuba, over Florida, over Oregon. I mean, an unbelievable. And I've actually been commenting on this with Nick, saying, like, what the hell? Have we just entered an area of space that's just full of debris that is just being sucked in?
Yeah, so I mean, 1947 to 1948 is just a year of craziness. And, you know, I wasn't alive, and most of us weren't alive back then. Some of us might have been, like some of our group anyway, but this is just February. I mean, Prussia was disbanded. The International Monetary Fund begins operations. IMF begins operations. The Belgian government changes. John D. Rockefeller donates New York City East Riverside to the United Nations, and the United Nations headquarters are built later that year.
And the CIA?
The creation of the CIA. This is only up to March. This is only like 2 months.
Israel is created.
World
IMF
Health
created.
Organization, NATO
All of these
as well.
NATO, the Atomic Energy Commission is formed. George II, King of Greece, dies. I mean, empires fall and rise. Like, corporations go down in a ball of flames when this stuff happens.
Now, Jules, and to clarify, that is the last time we were in this.
This is the second last time. So the one that we're in now, which is about to end, was the 1982 one. So the US became the superpower of globalism. You had the rise of Japan. You had capitalism just went stupid in the early 80s.
You had the Falklands War.
The Falklands War.
Lebanon War. Lebanon as well.
Yeah.
So you had start of these bubbles of wars in the Middle East and in South America.
Yep. And you've got new democracies formed. You've got revolts everywhere. There's a lot of stuff happening. So basically what it represents is power shifting. Like major monarchies or empires or corporations start in a cycle. Something happens at the 90-degree angles. Usually a war is started. At the opposition, we've got 9/11 on this cycle from 1982, and then it comes back to a conjunction, which is going to happen in 2020. So there's a lot of stuff going on, and we know how crazy this year has been, and it's just going to continue.
So let's look at the Queen again.
I just got my one little comment was that in there in June was also the start of the Marshall Plan. And most people do not comprehend what the Marshall Plan actually implemented. It's insane stuff. That is still a controlling factor to today. Megan, I'm just going to you, darling.
Yep. And then you've got Roswell. Roswell happened in that year too. A lot of stuff happened. So it's basically almost a mirroring of what's happening in 2019. So I think we just need to take into consideration and have a good look at what seeds are being planted for the next cycle.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, and I'm going to need copies of all these slides because these are like foundational. Really, they are foundational. This is incredible stuff.
And interestingly, Queen Elizabeth marries Philip Mountbatten, Prince Philip,
that year.
In the same year. That year. Yep.
I wonder
and when Uranus,
Charles was conceived.
When Uranus conjuncted her son, that was when she first met him, and she fell in love with him at the age of 13 or 14. She met him then, when it was the first round of Uranus conjunct her son. So I think Uranus conjunct her son is his death and her abdication, because it involved her and him. meeting, and there's 84 years, and then it happens again. So I think he's going to go, and she's going to stay, but she's going to step down. And then we get to the next. She has her own astrologer, right? Her
They
own
all
astrologer
do.
is looking at
They
her
all
chart.
do.
And her
And
own
that's
astrologer is giving her a heads up of this Pluto-Saturn conjunction, which is going to happen exact on her ascendant during an eclipse. So come on. She might only have months more to go when she follows. Her ascendant, Pluto, represents death and rebirth. It represents hidden things coming out, and it represents destruction as well. So when Pluto goes over your ascendant, things completely change. Your life changes. Your world turns upside down. And this is when, if you were heading for a demise in any sort of way, whether it's a career demise or it's a life demise or it's a attitude demise, any kind of demise that's very sort of seen and out there, that what people know of you, then Pluto hitting your ascendant is a demise. It cannot become a rebirth until it's past. So
It has to go through that cycle. It has to go through that demise.
So Prince Philip, I think, is going to have his sudden demise, and then she's going to have her demise, which might be slow because Pluto isn't a sudden. You might see her falling sick sometime at the end of the year, or she's already sick, who knows, right? Because it's very private. Her sun is in the 4th house, which makes her very private. She doesn't reveal much. So when it all becomes very public, I think is when Pluto goes over her ascendant at 21 degrees, and then about, we've got that happening already. Pluto's already there, and it has to get to 23 degrees before we see like major stuff happening, because the eclipse will bring it out. She's got the eclipses on her. She's got the nodes on her ascendant and descendant as well. So, I mean, her being a public figure is no coincidence. Her being a ruler in power is no coincidence at all. That's what Saturn represents. It represents authority, and her ascendant is right there.
Okay,
So,
I got a question.
a lot.
Brexit. Is not Brexit supposed to take place sometime in March? Can anyone clarify?
Yeah.
I'm trying to ignore Brexit because
29th of March.
29th of
And
March.
they haven't got a deal. Yeah,
there's
they
no
haven't
deal.
got a
Okay.
deal, and the pound is declining terribly.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah. Like, wow. I just actually had to make a purchase online in pound sterling, and I saw the equated price to the euro, and I was like, holy shit.
It's going right down, and also if you look at Bank of England's charts, they're also getting affected. Yeah. Go ahead, Megan.
You said 9th of March. That's the day that Mercury goes direct.
No, it's 29th.
29th
Or
of
29th of March. Sorry. 29th of March. Yeah. Mercury goes direct that day. You can't make this shit up. They do it.
No.
And
and
Uranus goes into Taurus.
And you know what? I would wager.
Okay, so stop.
the
Everyone stop.
timing of
Pause
it.
for a moment. Okay, so you guys have all done your astrologer's talk, which means absolutely jack shit to us. So back it off. So the 29th is Mercury and what? And what does that mean?
Mercury retrograde fucks with stuff so
Everything.
badly. Everything. So you don't want to like initiate things or start things when Mercury is in the pre-shadow. So when we had the full moon on Tuesday, Mercury was right where Neptune is, and that was entering the shadow zone. So when Mercury stops and goes back, the shadow is the part that it's going to cover again. So it's going to it's going to go into shadow on Neptune. It's going to be in shadow. It's going to station on the last degree of the zodiac. Station is when it sits still. So right before a planet changes direction in our view, it sits still and it pulses in the spot, and it's really intense. This is where Chiron has been sitting. So this is a really nasty retrograde compared to how nasty they usually are. Then it's going to go backwards, station again on Neptune, so sit still, and then move forward. When it hits the degree where it's stationed to go backwards. Once it passes that degree, you're kind of out of the woods. But when it goes direct, it's still a really good thing. You don't want to do anything when the motion is retrograde. So on the 29th, the day that the Brexit thing is planned, Mercury will finally go direct out of this stupid cycle. I guarantee you, if you look at the exact timing in the day, because Mercury is a fast-moving little motherfucker, you will see that they don't announce this or time it until a couple hours later when Mercury moves into Aries. They're not going to do it on the last degree of the zodiac. These guys are too smart. They use the system. Anyway,
and that was my point, is exactly that's why I brought up the whole Brexit thing. Because you know that we know that all these powerhouse people use astrology. We know that they plan out these announcements with these events, etc. So there has to be a specific reason why they pick that date. And like you said, with all the other shit that's going on, we talk the changing of monarchies, the changing of governments, etc. And there are those who are saying that basically, when England leaves the EU, this will be the trigger moment that begins the cataclysm within the EU, that begins everything. Just all the other countries will start to fall out, etc., and it will be the downfall.
And what happens when Mercury and Neptune are combined? Not only do we have like communications having to, like it doesn't. When Mercury goes retrograde, we know that our laptops, our computers, our phones, communication, everything goes upside down because people misunderstand us, the technology breaks down, things don't go through, things don't get sent, things start sitting in your box that isn't sent yet, and you're like, what is happening? So for a few weeks, you're just like, what is happening? But it doesn't, as soon as it goes forward again, it doesn't automatically clear up overnight. But the thing about this transit is that when it goes forward, it's sitting there with Neptune, which is really foggy. It is unclear. It is like a mist. It doesn't make sense. It is there's all kinds of impressions that are not real, and so Mercury is going to go forward right there with Neptune on it. And it's not going to be clear, and nothing's going to be set in put there in writing yet. Nothing's going to be announced, and it's going to be, I think even the news reporters are going to have a big problem deciding what to say.
Trying to spin
it's going to
documents.
get messed up completely.
Okay, so yes, I want to put a little...
It's illusion. The illusion.
So on the point of Mercury into retrograde, and I want to put this out there, because again, like we opened the show and we talked that astrology is treated like pseudoscience. most scientists don't believe in it. They don't have anything to do with it. I had a really good friend of mine in the States whose husband is probably one of the top audio visual technicians in the States, and he does conventions. So like when IBM has a massive convention, or Microsoft, he's the guy they call in to set up all the audio, the visual, etc. Now, I know him very well, like physically know him, we've met. He's a very straightforward guy. He's a real, he doesn't take shit. He's not an airy-fairy person at all. A couple of years ago, he was at doing the setup at this massive, and he says like one of the biggest telecommunication conventions in the US. He's setting it up, and they've got to switch over time. So it just so happens that he's in the bar waiting for him to go set up as the takedown crew are waiting for the rest of it. And there's another crew come in. And these are a group of people who he knows through the industry who are IT guys. And again, these guys are the best of the best of the best. So they're sitting in the bar having a chat. And one of the guys says to him, oh, well, just be careful, because when you start doing this switch over here, just watch your boards, because you're going to have some issues. And all the technicians are all like, oh my God, fucking Mercury in retrograde. And this friend of mine's husband went like, not the kind of words you expect to come out of the mouths of a bunch of hardcore technical people. And he went, really? I wouldn't have thought, and they were like, oh, no, like Mercury in retrograde fucks everything. And when we see that someone's planned one of these conventions and we know we're going to get called in, the first thing we do is look at the charts. And when we see that we're going to have to do one of these in the middle of Mercury in retrograde, we all go, oh, fuck no. Oh, can we not put this off for 2 weeks? Please don't make us do this right now. And he said, big companies like IBM, Microsoft, the big boys, when Mercury goes into retrograde, it's all hands on deck. No one gets holiday time. No one gets days off. It's every technician guy is on. And so this is corporate stuff. Now we're talking, and if these big corporations do things like tracking Mercury in retrograde, that should give us just a little bit of an inkling of the physical effects are that well established that the technicians are like, oh man, I just don't even want to be here right now because we know how bad it's going to be. So I just wanted to put that little piece out there because that's just one example, but that's a major example.
Yeah, I noticed that people following Mercury retrograde are getting more and more lately. It's becoming more accepted and mainstream, but only that one. I think it's because it's the one that people are affected the most today in this day and age.
Yeah, it's in your face when you go to open up Messenger and your Messenger goes, yeah, I'm not available right now. Or you send a message and you send a message and you send a message and then you finally break down and call the person on the phone and they're like, I didn't get any messages. It is in your face. In our technological age of communications and online stuff, that Mercury in retrograde is just so blatant you can't deny it.
Yeah, and the other thing is like full moons and eclipses. That's also becoming just as recognized by people because drama happens, emotions go all over the place, relationships break up, secrets are discovered, all those kinds of things are happening around, especially the eclipses. So it's like, oh, eclipse, oh no. But what people don't really know is whether the eclipse is falling on their chart and where. So they just go, oh, it's an eclipse. And sometimes they ride through it and it's okay. And sometimes they go through major stuff. So it depends on your personal chart, obviously, what's going on in there and whether that point where the eclipse is going to affect anything personal to you. To you
personally. Okay. So when's the next eclipse coming up? Because I know we've got another one. And what the fuck is with this? I'm sorry. Like I said, I've always been, I love astronomy, even as a kid, and the planets. And so when I was a kid in school, we didn't have eclipses every other fucking month. And we certainly didn't have fucking 3 and 4 blood moons a year. So like, what? Like, where the hell does this come from?
I don't know where these blood moons and shit are coming from, but eclipses happen on a 6-month cycle. But I think that they're just not as well known is because unless it's like exact or total in your location, people just assume it's not an eclipse. Just because you can't see it at your time of day, there's still one happening somewhere. It might be penumbral, it might be total, but it's like 6 months and then you have a set of 2 or 3 and then 6 months and then a set of 2 or 3. It's these, if you go into the charts, Amina had touched on the nodes of the moon. So when you have a full moon, so here's Queen Elizabeth's chart, right? So she's got like a nodal opposition return. So these nodes here, she has her, oh no, she has a nodal return. Sorry, I had that backwards. She has her south node in Capricorn. The south node is in Capricorn. So it's happening again. That's an 18-year cycle. So since this node, the south node is in Capricorn, when we had full and new moons in this region, we had eclipses. In the summer, when we have the sun by this moon, or a node of the moon, we'll have our eclipses over here in July. Last year, they were in this part of the summer, which is Leo, which is, July into August. And then, the nodes move backwards. So it kind of backs up, like we used to have them on the Virgo Pisces. Before that, it was Libra Aries. So it's the way they click around. That's what determines eclipses. That's why the nodes are so potent in a chart.
Interesting. Okay, so when we look at the historical, we talked about, okay, so the 1947-48 was the repeat of what we're seeing right now, as far as the planetary alignments, et cetera, and I'm using alignments loosely because I don't know what other word to use. These are repeats, and you said, we've talked about this, is when you go back through history, you can, and you look at these alignments, when this kind of comes up. So historically, what are some of the other dates that have come up that have are like a mirror image of what we're seeing now?
So a mirror image of what we're seeing now hasn't really happened since the year 1284.
Okay. Oh,
yeah, right.
So in 2020, yeah, it's like the start of a 500-year cycle and the start of a 1,000-year cycle. So it's coming up to a critical point. We haven't seen this since 1284, and then the last time Pluto was in Capricorn with the similar alignments was in 1517.
you guys just talk for a second. I have to look something up.
1284 was the start of the Dark Ages.
Yeah, we're looking at the Crusades they happened over a few hundred years, but they were critical around 1284 because we had the Pope bring down the King of it was a big Catholic thing when the to do with Eastern Europe. So there was a lot of politics going on in Eastern Europe, and the Crusades were ongoing, but kings were getting brought down. And this is like the first time a pope is telling the king to sod off, right? And instigate a revolution in another country with its bringing its king down because the king doesn't agree. So we start to see the Vatican start to rise at this point. And after that, you see, around that time, well, up until that time, if you were a nobody, you could be in a slave, a serf, or you couldn't rise to any sort of situation. You couldn't get to power at all, right? You were trodden on by authority all the time. There were lords, there were knights and people who ruled over you. There were kings, and so the general villager was probably owing his whole entire life to tilling the land and growing crops for the landowners, the rulers. So 1284 started to see an extreme sense of that.
And it's almost like a repeat right now because the corporations are kind of the rulers and we're being downtrodden financially at the moment and in our everyday lives.
The interesting similarity is when we saw the 1947 history that Jules brought up, we see Israel is in focus, and we also see Arab issues coming up with different borders changing in the Arab world, and we see the rise of the UN and NATO. And then we're coming to another cycle where in 1284 we saw the Crusades. So there's Crusades and there's that area, that region again. So the thing that's different about what's the same about the Pluto and Saturn conjunction in Capricorn that relates to 1284 is that Jupiter was there as well. So Jupiter was in Capricorn. So that's the last time we saw the trio, Saturn, Pluto and Jupiter in Capricorn together. And we had this conjunction with Uranus opposite in Cancer. So Uranus is like the people who can't rebel. They're opposite. They're at the other side. They are stuck. But we had in 1517, I think it was, we had a trio of Pluto, Capricorn, and Jupiter in Sagittarius. So that's the last time a conjunction happened with Jupiter, but it was in Sagittarius. And this time Uranus was trine, and we started to see people break free. This is when the lower working class, who are just serfs and villagers, could start to rise up and become the middle class. So the middle class started opening up. So what we've got coming up in 2020 is a little bit of the 1284 chart and a little bit of the 1517 chart, because we've got Pluto in Capricorn, and Saturn's entered Capricorn, and then Jupiter will enter Capricorn when it's conjunct with Saturn and Pluto. There will be an eclipse at the same time, but this time Uranus is entering Taurus. So we're looking at Uranus starting. You see, we've had rebellions happen when Uranus was in Aries. We've seen right towards the end the yellow vest movement crop up, and people wanting corporations to come down. At the very least, they want them to pay more tax. That's the very least of it, and the most of it is that the extreme other extreme is that they want them to come down completely, stop ruling everybody, stop trying to
like
intimidate
we're done.
Everybody. We're done.
Well, it's interesting.
Just
two things that just jumped out at me, those two dates you gave. Just prior to both of those dates, in the 1200s, Magna Carta was signed. Now, the Magna Carta is a very, very major event which holds us to this day. And just prior to that, you have the Treaty of Verona, which is actually more important than the Magna Carta, but most Americans won't listen to you when you talk about that. Treaty of Verona still stands. These were the prior to that date, kind of the lead up to. In the 1500s, the one you said 1518, in 1511 is when the King James Version of the Bible was released. And again, most people do not want to recognize the fact that every single Bible on the planet is, regardless of what they tell you, is based on the King James Version of the Bible. Every Bible in existence right now is based on the King James Version Bible. Slight little bits, but that's where
that was the only time that regular people were taught to read.
That's right.
After the King James Bible came up. Mm-hmm. Before that, you had to listen and obey for what you were told, but you couldn't read it for yourself. So when we had the 1200s, everybody just had to listen and obey, and so nobody had any rights to an opinion at all. But as soon as the King James First Bible came out, people were starting to be encouraged to read, and you could perhaps get one person in every few households, no matter what class you were in, who could actually decipher the written word. And they could start interpreting the Bible for themselves. Regardless of whether they had an opinion that was credited or not, they could start forming one.
Right, but you see, because they've put the book out and now said, now base your opinion off this book. Never mind anything previous. Here's the book, and you're going to base all your opinions off this book. Yeah, and we see the same thing with the Magna Carta, and the same thing. They're still pushing Magna Carta law. Everyone wants to talk about common law. Well, here we go. Here's the piece. We're going to give you this, and you're going to base all your opinions off this piece. So we'll make that the piece that goes public.
Can I add something to, like, it kind of layers on top of what Amina was saying and then what you just threw in. Like, this is all fitting really beautifully in my mind together right now. When you look back to the 1284 chart, as Amina mentioned, you have your Capricorn lineup of Saturn, Pluto, and Jupiter. So Jupiter expands. You also have the nodes there. The nodes are so important because they are very, like, they're karmic. Like they are very like potent karmic destined factors. The south node is something that is being released, and the north node is where the universe is pointing you. So if it's like a battle, the north node wins, the south node loses, always.
Okay.
So it's always kind of revolving around. Like there's always some area of the world or life or whatever that you need to be avoiding, right? That's where the south node is. If you think of like midpoint as like a plane here, the north node is up here, the south node is down here. This is the good, this is the bad. This is radiating good. Anything with this energy is going to radiate bad. That's Capricorn right now. So the corporations and all those really Saturnian, Capricornian, you know, the government, like all the institutions and this and that. Anyway, so when we had the nodes there in the 1284 area, Capricorn actually had the north node. So Capricorn energy was winning. So it locks us into this 1,000-year cycle. Now we have a reversal. We have the south node in Capricorn. So all of this is being blown apart. And yes, it's releasing. And then when you had the Uranus opposition in the 1200s, where the south node was, so it's like she was saying, like the peasants, like they just kept getting like squashed and pushed down and pushed down. It's like nobody could rise up because every time you thought you could, something just randomly just came down. It was like, boom, no, you don't. Boom, no, you don't. Suppress, suppress, suppress. That's how the astrology was set up. It's the flip now. We have that same Capricorn heavy lineup, but now they're on the losing team.
And you know when they realized this? They at first, you remember Agenda 2020?
Agenda 21?
Yeah, and they changed it.
2030?
They changed it to 2030.
Can I pull up the chart for
realizing they can't possibly? Oh, that's not going to work for us. We got to like just keep pushing.
At first they thought they can do it, but when they realized about the nodes and everything and what's really going to happen, somebody must have shown it to them. No, you can't do it. You can't do it. No, no, no. You wait until it's all past and then you try, because this won't work. This won't work. An astrologer must have told them that.
They had to have, because this is not a normal chart. This is not a normal chart.
This is a bizarre looking chart. What's this a chart for?
This is the chart of the lunar eclipse right before it's like what, 2-3 days before the conjunction is exact. Like you can see, this is Saturn. This is
what
Pluto.
date?
This is January 10th, 2020, and then we'll look at the chart for the 12th. This is Pluto. This is Saturn. As you can see, they're both at 22 degrees, but Saturn hasn't officially met Pluto because the minute is 33 and this is 43. You have to wait till 46 minutes for them to meet. I have the chart for that too. But this is the eclipse right before. So the buildup is so potent. I was thinking maybe all of us could just kind of like at it and see what we see. Could be fun.
Interesting.
Because like if you think about these charts, well, it is. And if you think about like okay, let's look at, I mean, the Queen doesn't have a normal chart per se, but if you look at her chart, for example, right, everything is kind of, hers isn't the best example, but you know, not everything is sitting right on top of each other. You have a little bit here, a little bit here, a little bit there. When you go into this eclipse, you have multiple cycles of varying lengths exact. It's not like, you know, they're 2-3 degrees apart, they're close. No, they're fucking exact. You have the south node with Jupiter 8 degrees. You have the sun in a lunar eclipse 20 degrees, and then the moon is at 20 degrees. You have Mercury right there with the sun within minutes. It's so close. Then you have Saturn and Pluto at the same degree. Like, this is not a normal chart for these things to just line up like that. It's like if you think of like a big dial on a safe with all these concentric rings, it's like multiple wheels just went click, 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 click. Doesn't happen all the time.
And the other thing is like, okay, so this looks like a chart of us versus them.
Yes.
We're the moon. We're the moon sitting by ourselves, not being able to hold any power. We're sitting in Cancer. We're trying to protect ourselves like a little crab. And there's all the power on the other side. But what happens after an eclipse? A planet will come along, a fast-moving planet will come along, and it will hit every single point that the eclipse has highlighted. And if you look down, at that little male sign there, Mars. Okay, Mars there is in 5 Sagittarius during that eclipse, and Mars moves relatively fast. It's quite close to the sun, so it moves around the sun faster, right? So the eclipse is like a snapshot. It's like it's going to take a snapshot of that event, and that snapshot is going to hold itself in place for as long as that eclipse is. How many minutes is that eclipse? If it's 3 minutes, it will be a 3-year snapshot. So we you know, if it's just a 2-minute eclipse, it's still a 2-year snapshot. And Mars doesn't take that long to go over all of this. It takes a few months. And Mars is going to head right into, and you know, Mars is about Aries. Aries likes to form a revolution. It doesn't like to follow the rules, but it also is like, it asks why should I why should I do that? I don't want to do that. I'm not going to do that. It has that ability to bulldoze through in a very sort of Martian way. It's like war. So something is going to happen on a very high level that is going to make a lot of chaos come out of it via people who are much lower coming in and saying, okay, this, I don't want this, I don't want this, I don't want this. I mean, of course, the sun is going to move away, and the sun is going to go over all of these things as well. So the sun is going to also play a role. So it's going to be very conscious, it's going to be very open, it's going to be very out there. The news is going to be like chock-a-block with politics and issues on power.
Which it already is.
Oh, it's going to get worse with Mercury right there, with the sun as it's happening. The sun illuminates what's going on. Mercury is what we're thinking about, what we're talking about, what we're communicating about. So with this guy, these two guys just flying over there right immediately as it's happening. Yeah, no, this is going to be big.
Okay, so if we were to take a snapshot, if you will, of the next year, from February 24th, where we're sitting right now in 2019, and look, give or take a year, looking at all the charts, looking at all of these things, can you guys give us a summary of like, what are we going to see? We talked about Queen Elizabeth specifically, but what other types of things is this? Because you talked about the fact of, you guys were talking about money. You guys were talking about, one of you guys were bringing up cryptocurrencies and things like that. So the financial, the political, the governmental, corporate structures, etc. What are we going to kind of see over this next year?
I just want to bring up a couple of things that came up in the chat, and that was to do with the 1517, 1518. It was the establishment of the Holy Roman Empire, and also the split off from the Protestant Reformation Church as well. Yep. So big things happen. So really, if the Queen abdicates or passes away, it's likely to happen within the next, say, 12 months. And what's that going to mean financially for all the Commonwealth nations? The reprinting of money, if they're going to reprint money, they may not. We may convert to crypto.
Purely digital money?
Purely digital. We could become a cashless society. We could, you see all the controversy in the Vatican at the moment. It could mean the fall of religions. It could mean a lot of things. With all the planets on one side of the zodiac, you see they're all sort of huddled on one side. It's creating havoc with the magnetics. It's creating seismic activity, volcanic activity. We could see something like Kilauea or something happen. Sorry, my dogs are just going off in the background.
So we're looking at Taurus. So this is March 7th. Amina, did you just put this one up, I think?
Yeah, so I did, because we're looking at like what's going to happen, right? So before that eclipse that happens and before the conjunction in the beginning of next year, what's going to happen this year? So the thing is that Uranus, which is a planet of sudden change and electricity and revolution and things like that, is entering the sign of Taurus, which is about the earth. It's about real estate, property, banking, all things that are to do with security and money. And the thing is that it did enter last year before it just peeked in to Taurus for a couple of degrees, and then it went back out. So last year, as soon as it entered at 0 degrees, we got a massive volcano eruption in Hawaii. So that was the first thing. And then we had issues with crypto. So crypto was going up and down, wasn't it? I mean, I don't have any crypto and I don't really follow it in the news. But whenever I see other people posting things that are about crypto, I can see that there's sudden changes, there's ups and downs. And recently there's been something quite major happening, right? Somebody in Canada who's got the keys to a crypto passed away, right? Can you hear me?
Yep.
Okay. So so there's your hint. So when Uranus has gone into Taurus, it gives you a bit of a look at what's going to happen. What am I going to do for the next 7 years? So Uranus has an 84-year cycle which goes around the zodiac. It spends roughly 7 years in each sign. Yeah. So when it was in Aries, if you think about it, people were uprising slowly getting, I mean, even if it was just to go to the polling station and vote for change without any sort of uprising in a violent way or protests in the street. They just wanted to all go and change the government when it was time. Even that happened, because that happened here in Malaysia and it happened in other places. I'm not sure where it was, somewhere in Europe, but people were like, were looking to change. Then we had the Yellow Vest movement start up. Okay, so anytime now a heavy law is put into place, people are asking questions. That was the Uranus in Aries. And they say, no, I don't want that. I don't want that. People power, things like that. And we also got new innovations. So when we had innovations in Aries, it was all about Instagram. It was all about being me as well. So
Selfies.
it's like, I want to be a YouTube channel. I want selfies. I want to put my pictures up on Snapchat. I want to be like a Kardashian and get lots of followers and constantly report my life story. I want to take pictures of my food. Everything was about me, and technology was following it, right? So what happens when Uranus changes signs and it goes into Taurus, which is very fixed and very earthy, and it's about money and it's about real estate, it's about property. So on one hand, you've got innovation. On the other hand, you've got revolution. So on the revolution side, people might be rebelling against banking laws, real estate limitations, property taxes, things like that. And on the other side, we might have innovations. We might have innovative farming. That's very Taurian, farming and earth. And people might get very innovative with their farming concepts and ideas. Taurus is also about the body. So we may get interesting new things happening, innovations to do with healing the body. It's very grounded and physical like that. So perhaps things like, I think we've just seen an introduction to it where sound healing can cure cancer. I mean, there's a headline there already. So there's things like that. It's innovation. That's very Uranus. And the Urian aspect into Taurus, it could be innovation to do with the earth. It could be innovation to do with medicine. It could be innovation to do with banking. So we've got like new ways of banking and owning property and wealth. And then the other thing about Uranus is that whatever it touches, it sparks. because it's very electrical. We invented electricity, or we discovered electricity when we discovered Uranus. So it's about that new age, new dawning of a new era. But it has to go through all the different signs for it to complete its cycle and innovate in every area. So now we're looking at what is going to be innovated. Maybe we're going to innovate new ways of housing. Maybe those apartment blocks are not as effective anymore. Maybe we want to innovate. We can look at different ways of building. We can look at different ways of building a community. We can different ways of structuring a house made of different things. Even if it is an old idea, but we reinvented, like building a house like a barn out of straw and hay, but insulating it, and that kind of thing. Or pre-pack housing.
Innovation.
That could be one.
I get it. Yep. It's interesting because, for example, all of these things that you've mentioned, we're already seeing them dripping in. Okay.
Yes.
The first prefab.
We had an insight.
Hemp. We've got, things like everyone's talking about permaculture farming. Everyone's talking about growing your own within your house. IKEA has even released a little device that you can grow sprouts in your kitchen. These are almost like the leading edge of the innovation. And I think, personally, the community aspect of what you just said, it's because community, the new way that we put communities together is going to envelope all of that. It's going to be about security. It's going to be about community and unity, but it's going to be about growing our own food. It's going to be about building houses. It's going to be about how we get energy. It's going to be all of that. And I really, given what you're talking about, I can see that that's got to be one of the next major pushes that we're going to see come through, because we're already getting the drips. The pieces are coming in bit by bit.
And also Uranus is about being a humanitarian. Yes. So we are now aligning ourselves against this power that has been overseeing regulations for a very long time. So since 1284, we've had to suffer all these laws that keep growing and getting bigger. But now we can start inventing new laws or new systems and new ways to deal with it that are more humanitarian, that are they're more people orientated.
Exactly. It's people orientated.
Society a bit better that way.
Yeah, not corporate oriented.
Well, if you think about it, with Uranus having just gone through Aries over the last 7 to 8 years, Aries is about the self and the identity. So we've all, on a personal level, been going through these shifts of maybe what is normal and told to us isn't really what's best for us. And before, people, not to say that nobody could have been an on-fucker before Uranus was in Aries, but if you were of that mindset before, you were kind of looked at sideways or made to think that you were crazy. You know what I mean? But then you see this 7-8 year shift with Uranus going through Aries, and people are embracing their individualism more instead of being told what to do, because Aries is the self, it's the identity. Uranus is the change, right? It's something coming through, bringing in the new in a very electric way. So that leads you into Taurus. So now we're everything that we value, everything that Amina touched on, is something that we put value in, right? The food we eat, the water we drink, how we treat the earth, our money, our material goods, how we use them. And that is going to take us into when Uranus moves into Gemini in 7 to 8 years. So after we start shifting through our values and all these structures, then we're going to shift into the way that we think about things and the way that we approach things and the way that we come together as community. And then when we lead into Cancer, that's really going to change the way that we live. The way that we live over the next 20 years, so different. And it ties into with the North Node being in Cancer now, showing where we're going.
Well, and that's one of the things I was going to ask. What are the secondary? Because so you've talked about this one thing. Uranus is here and it's moving into Taurus, etc. But there's, I'm assuming that there are other aspects, other planetary aspects that, of course, also moving and shifting at the moment. Do these
Yep.
things kind of double down on this, like support this and make it that much stronger?
Well, when Uranus in Taurus gets to a degree where it aligns with Neptune in Pisces, Neptune's level of people becoming more spiritual or new agey even, but more in tune. Now, I'd say like that Dolores Cannon video that we were watching earlier.
Yeah.
And she was saying that once upon a time, if you heard voices, you were considered on the spectrum of schizophrenia, right?
Yeah.
But now they can't, because there are more and more people claiming to hear voices. So people are channeling entities, or they're channeling past lives, or they're channeling things like that, and it's kind of quite widespread. So if you go to a YouTube search on it, you'll see thousands and thousands of videos of ordinary people tapping into extraordinary things. Yep. Which is very woo-woo, and is really like it's kind of like an acceptance almost that it's kind of semi-normal now. Yep. So some people say, well, I'm psychic, and they could be actually a very conventional person now saying, yep, well, I'm actually psychic, and people will not look at them, and it won't damage their life in any way, really. It would just be, okay, each to his own. That's the effect of this Neptune in Pisces. So when Uranus comes to an aspect where it is at an angle that complements that Neptune in Pisces, I think what we're going to see is it becoming more accepted, but also perhaps more innovative as well. So instead of the old age methods of just channeling and tuning in, or looking at cards, or looking at astrology even, because that falls under that, we'll be seeing new ways of looking at things like that. So maybe there'll be more awakening of telepathy, or people will be having more jobs, because Taurus is very, it's also about what you own and what you have, and what you possess. So not possession, but like what you have.
I got it. Yeah.
So,
not to be confused with demonic possession.
No.
Yes.
No, but people could be opening companies and businesses, or working from home doing this, and it'd be quite ordinary.
Interesting.
And you never know, there might be, instead of the channels that are being used currently, there might be new platforms that accommodate this, just like Instagram accommodated Uranus in Aries,
the
Instagram
selfie.
and Snapchat. The innovation follows what people want. Yeah.
And again, but we're already seeing that drip
the innovation will follow that as well.
We're already seeing that drip in. Well, there's so many of us who are working on new ways of forming community, new ways of forming online community, new ways of communicating within those realms. Even if you look at cryptocurrency, the idea of blockchain, that is another new piece that's being brought in, of saying, we talk about things, for example, in the Taurus side of property and buying and purchasing property. Well, now we're looking at people are like, how we can do this on the blockchain, where this all exchanges this way. So these pieces are already setting themselves up. The pieces are coming into play right now.
So new forms of commerce and exchange.
Yeah. And that's not just cryptocurrency.
For the
that's
community.
Like barter. People are talking about going back to barter communities. People are talking about going back to exchanging the value, making their own currencies. And we know it's already being done. There's all kinds of communities all over the world, in the US especially, that they've created their own currency, and they work within those currencies.
So when people create more technology to support it, it's basically a community movement enabling what people want in order to share their resources and own their stuff. So what happens to the corporations? What happens to the banks? What happens to the governments who want a piece of everything? Well, then that's where we look at the Capricorn issue. So Capricorn represents government. It represents the order of state and power and
Big
structure,
oil, big pharmacy.
Structure and form.
structure, form, the authority. So that's why it's very interesting that this whole episode falls into place all at the start and at the end of this year. In between, there's very it's kind of an adapting time, I think. But we will start to, like you said, the things that drip in before it actually happens will be happening, because Pluto has been in Capricorn since 2008 and it's going to remain there until 2024. So when Pluto entered Capricorn, we started to see political figures getting played by other political figures. And then we saw the rise of WikiLeaks, didn't we? And WikiLeaks releasing information about people in power and exposing people in power. So if
Panama
people
Papers,
were not acting,
Paradise Papers.
yeah. So if they weren't acting with true authenticity at their role, they were getting exposed. And that was Pluto in Capricorn doing that. And then we started to see when banks go down. So 2008, we had a financial crash. And we saw that something that made everybody quite upset. We saw the banks getting
Bailed out.
the government's helping.
Bailed
They
out.
were getting bailed out. Yeah, they were getting bailed out, and people were upset. And they started to look at the banking industry more carefully and questioning, why did they get bailed out, and why is it our money that bails them out? So it's our loss, it's their loss, but they get helped and we don't. So that was the first exposure period. And then when Pluto was right in the center of Capricorn, we had the American change of power. So instead of it going to the same old players, i.e. the Clintons and the Bushes and all those people that, and the Obama groups, because they're all aligned with one another, the power shifted to somebody completely different. Even though Donald Trump is still having to play the system, but there's a different look at what has WikiLeaks got on him so far. There's not that much. So he is a businessman, and businessmen like him are very Capricornian as well. So what happens to him once he's in power? What happens in the beginning of 2020? 2021, when there is another America goes to the voting system again.
Was it
What happens to
2020
that?
is the vote, isn't it?
I thought it was 2020.
I
And
think
this
it's
is
2020
maybe,
is the
yeah.
next election. Yep.
this is the thing with this Pluto Saturn conjunction, right? It plants a seed, and if that cycle is not done with integrity and good business manner, like the IMF, the CIA, the creation of all these things, Pluto's a transformative planet. It's just going to come in and go, right, you have not done this with integrity. I'm going to fuck your shit up. I'm going to dissolve everything. So basically, things that started in
bring it all down.
1947, 1948, with all those treaties and constitutions and, new countries and things like that, and we can see the corruption right now. Pluto exposes the underbelly of all the corruption that's going on at the moment. So with that coming to an end in 2020, it's going to be really, really interesting.
And then we've also got what's happening with the Church and the Vatican, and it's taken Pluto all the way to where it is now, like going 20 degrees to bring out the dirt from what's going on with all these priests and paedophiles and dominated by the powers that were in place to prevent this information coming out, to prevent people complaining or taking pastors to court or their cardinal or, you know, whatever, you know, whoever was accused at that level was never ever going to get into trouble until Pluto came along and worked its way through Capricorn. So when Jupiter, which represents religion, enters Capricorn on the 3rd of December this year, we're going to see more of that. We're going to see more justice taking place. So when they can't win in court, when the battles are lost, and this also goes for the pharmaceutical industry, they're getting exposed as well, and they're going to court too. So
now, and
Saturn in Capricorn is
one of the other pieces that one of the big pieces put into play, of course, is the CIA is getting exposed continuously. Over the last 10 years, we've watched the CIA get exposed for running drugs out of Mexico, out of Malaysia, out of, like, you name this place, the CIA has been caught running drugs, money laundering, assassination, you name it. The IMF. Now, we've got an interesting thing just playing out right now with the U.S. trying to push this coup in Venezuela.
Mm-hmm.
The first thing this fucking asswipe in Venezuela did was say, oh, well, we're going to call in the IMF and we're going to take on debt from the IMF and they're going to restructure. Okay, wait, because this is the IMF always gets called in. It is a template that plays out over and over. Why did the Ebola outbreak happen in 2014 in countries that had no history of Ebola before? Because the IMF needed to go in. They devastated the countries. They made this huge thing. And then the IMF came in and said, oh, look, it's okay. We're going to help you now. We're going to restructure. But you're going to give us all your mineral rights, all your gold rights, all your diamonds, all your oil, and that's what they did. Which is why Nigeria is in the shit show right now, because Nigeria was like, yeah, no, we don't want it. Thanks. No, thanks. We don't need you. But Nigeria has been on the shit end of the stick since then, because they wouldn't play the game. We're about to see this play out again with Venezuela now, where they're trying to push this IMF. And well, IMF, if you want to talk about the dirty underbelly of the fucking snake, the IMF is just, it's right there with the CIA as the dirtiest of the most disgusting political, financial tools of enslavement.
yeah.
Absolutely.
So now it's all getting exposed and everything is coming out. Can it continue? Well, my answer to that with Saturn conjunct Pluto is no, it can't continue. It cannot continue the way it's been going. Pluto is going dredging, digging deep down, taking all of this up, putting it all out there so that everyone can see it. And Saturn is coming along to put its foot down and say, no more. End.
Done.
Jupiter is going to represent the justice system. Let's take it all out and put it through a trial. Let's bring out the evidence.
Yep.
So in all
and
these
we've got
matters,
that again. Trials against Monsanto has just lost the big lawsuit in California, which has majorly hit Bayer and Monsanto. And then we have like the big pharma. We've got several lawsuits against big pharma that they have lost, substantially lost, that is being hidden. We've got trials against, well, we've got Netanyahu is up for trial again for corruption and fraud in Israel. Well, there you go, Israel, right? We have got all of these pieces. So Theresa May and all the shit show she's done on this whole Brexit thing is being fully exposed. All of these, because governments are corporations, let's remember that. Big reminder, every government is a corporation. They're all exposed right now. And under a bright fucking light.
And just because we've got those moon's nodes in our favor, doesn't matter how heavy and how big and powerful they are on that side, it's the people that win.
Yeah. And it's about fucking time. It's about fucking time. The people,
And they have been
So-
so panicked about this. That's why they've done these things to try to hide it up and cover it. And if you think about the way like that the universe is set up, like up, down, light, dark, everything's a set of opposites. There's really no good and bad. It's all personal. I mean, obviously there is wrong. You know what I mean? Like some of the things these corporations are doing are wrong, but there is no good or bad per se. It's perspective. Like the light isn't good and the dark isn't bad. You have to shift through these cycles like in proportion and in order. It's kind of like a gentleman's game. And I feel like that this has not been respected and that they have tried to hang on post December 21st, 2012, when they were supposed to hand it back over, you know what I mean? Because we're out of that dark cycle. So I think that they are scared as shit that this is happening, because not only does this signify the fall of corporations, all that, if you want to get like really deep with this, if you look at this from a sidereal perspective, so I practice tropical astrology. Tropical astrology sits in like the zodiac itself, the whole 360 wheel, it is fixed. And wherever the angle of energy from a given planet is going through that 360-degree wheel, that determines, you know, Aries, Taurus, da da da. It's just a name for the angle. But the actual constellations themselves rotate around. So the galactic center sits on the fixed wheel at 27 degrees of Sagittarius. If you run the Pluto-Saturn conjunction in a sidereal chart, the actual degree of the constellation where 20 Capricorn is tropically is 27 Sag.
which means
How fucking scary is that?
sorry. Explanation, Megan.
Okay, so if you're an elite person and you're like, oh shit, like we're not going to be in charge anymore, like we have to hand it over to the people, like you know what I mean, and you don't want to do it, and you're like, yeah, let's try to hide it from them, and then you see that like the universe literally lines up to like suck you into the black hole, almost, you know what I mean? Like the galactic center is where we connect beyond us. And like a bigger realm, if you want to get like, you know, woo with like, you know, people say like reptilians and this and that. Things beyond us come through the galactic center. Big energy blasts come through the galactic center. Like it's a portal to us. And this Saturn-Pluto alignment sits, like the stars sit there because of the precession. Okay. So it's like, not only is it like this crazy conjunction and that crazy conjunction happening at, you know, once, the locationality of it is something that would only happen once every 25,000 years.
Interesting. Now I got one more that we have to throw in here, because I just looked at the time and going, holy shit, we're like 4 minutes to being at 2 hour mark. I fucking felt like it was like 40 minutes. Okay, the 13th sign. Okay, this Orpheus or whatever, okay? Please, can you guys just address this? Because I'm Ophiuchus, yeah, I can't say the word.
Ophiuchus.
Okay, because this keeps coming up, and I've had people talking about it, and I'm just like, I don't. When as soon as I saw that shit play out, when the announcements were all made and that, I was like, that's all bullshit, right there. That's a distraction, and that's bullshit. And I couldn't tell you why, because I'm not an astrologer, even remotely. But my gut was just like, that's such a load of bullshit, it's not even funny. This is a made-up piece to keep people confused. So please explain. Tell us what's going on here.
There is no 13th sign. There has never been, there will never be. There are more than 13 constellations. Some are close to the zodiac, but they are not the zodiac. And each sign actually has like little companion constellations. Ophiuchus falls within the realm of Scorpio, but it is not its own sign. It's big. It doesn't mean it's its own sign. If you want to go back to the absolute basics, what I was saying about cardinal, fixed, mutable, that cycle doesn't work with 13. It doesn't work. Our seasons don't have, like we don't have a random season that doesn't start, then be itself, and then start to change. Like if you threw in Ophiuchus, so Ophiuchus is between Sagittarius and Scorpio. So you wouldn't have like fall begin and then stay fall and then not be anything before it turns into winter. Like you wouldn't just like randomly have a new season or a phase of a season pop out. It just doesn't work with the natural order. it doesn't work.
I'm thinking
There's
because
more
okay,
to it than that, but yeah.
we have 10 fingers, right? We got 2 thumbs, 4 fingers on each. We got 5 on each hand. If you threw in a 13th sign, you'd have to have 6 fingers. You'd have to be a 6-fingered person, because this is how they used to count in the old days. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. Okay, there's 12, and then you've got 2 times 12. So you've got 24, 36, 48, 60. So we got, 12, 24, 36, 48, 60. Now you take 60 and you've got 120, 180. Then you've got 240, 300, 360. So when you count in the old days, you count to 360 on 2 hands. If you want to add a finger and be one of those 6-fingered entities that come along, I don't know, that was somewhere in the Bible or whatever, then you could have a 13th sign for your people. But for our people, we've got 360 degrees, which is divided into 12, and each of those has 30 degrees in it. And that's because it relates to us. Somewhere far out there, it may be, they've got 3-fingered beings that have different charts, but we have this chart because it represents us. It's how we count in the old days.
It's how we count, and 360 doesn't divide with 13. It doesn't work. Everything, like astrology, is set up on different numbers. So 360 can be divided by 2, by 1.
Okay, and
be divided by
360
2.
360 being a perfect circle, right? So.
Yeah. You can divide it by 1, you can divide it by 2, you can divide it by 3, you can divide it by 4, 5, 6, 10, 12. Like, these are all really important numbers when you break down astrology to a very simple point. It doesn't work. Oh, so 27.692307, that's what you get when you divide it by 13. It doesn't work. It does not fractalize properly. You can't do it. Like, it's just not logical.
And the fact that it was magically discovered in the last, 10 years? A little less than that, I would say, because I remember the first time I heard about it was about 2012. 2013 was the first time I started hearing this about this new sign. If you don't want people to be able to do astrology and you want to keep them confused because you're trying to bury the information, what do? You throw another sign in there just to muck everything right up. That was my gut feeling.
And if you look at it, the astrology belt runs down the middle. These are your zodiac signs, but they have companion signs that sit with it. They're associated with, like, Taurus has, connection with Orion. It has connection with the Eridanus, but it's not the zodiac. You can be associated with something, but not the thing. You know what I mean?
Show us this Orphish, whatever it is.
The fucus is right here. You have Scorpio here. Interesting that Scorpio rules the sex organs, and look at that, right?
Yeah.
And then you have a fucus right here, and you have Hercules, and you have serpents. But it is not. It is not. It does not sit in the zodiac belt. This is a map of the sky. Like, this isn't like twisted to fit inside the body. The body's just drawn around it. Right?
Okay. That's a good point right there. That is actually a really good point. That is a map of the sky. Doesn't fit within the 360-degree belt, if you will.
And this is also where your root chakra is. And there's a fixed royal star within Scorpio and Taurus. That's right there. Like, it all lines up. It's all right there in front of us. They don't want us to know it because heaven forbid we become empowered to be able to do anything for ourselves, right? But it's all right there. So they throw these distractions in to debunk astrology. You know what I mean? Oh, we'll burn you at the stake if you talk about how nature and science and everything is one. It's just multiple languages. Like, I've studied from a bunch of different sources, like literally since I was like 9 years old. And I really like Santo Bonacci, like pre-crazy Santos. And one thing that he said the first time I watched one of his lectures, it really resonated with me. I don't believe in astrology. I know astrology. I don't believe in English. I know English.
Yeah.
People that speak French, they don't believe in it. They know it. It's a language. Science is a language. Religions are different languages. And if you really strip everything down to the bare bones, it's all the same fucking story, just with different language around it. And we get caught up in like the semantics of it. You know what I mean?
And that's the downfall we have. The downfall we continuously have is the use of language. It is the words that we use to define things, and we continuously trip over it all the time. And I know English. English is the most fucked up language ever created, and I think it was done on purpose to be able to exclude conversations like this. Because we how many times during the Unfuck It shows do we try and have a conversation about something that we just don't have words within our language band that give an exact meaning. And so we end up playing with convoluted language, and this is where we all fall down. We continuously fall down with the trying to define different things through language. It's a continuous. Guys, we're at the end of our time. I just want to say again, we didn't get into the stuff that I wanted to also get into because I knew that this was not going to get done in 2 hours. There was no way this was going to get done in 2 hours. So we will have to schedule like the next one, and we'll look at our schedules between the four of us of how we can work this out. It'll probably be at the same horrific time of day. Sorry, John. Because we have so many questions. Some of the questions I want to get into is going to be talking about things like the electric universe theory, because this is, again, we're talking about, it's very easy to put astrology over here and not look at the scientific tie-ins between planets aligning. And if every planet is connected energetically through these literally, what they are now visibly finding, umbilical cords that tie every single planetary body together. We need to look at that because this is a really, really important discussion. It'll have to happen next time. So that is it for tonight. I want to thank Megan and Jules and Amina. You guys, I thank you so much for coming on and doing this. And like I said, we're definitely going to have a few more of these because we've only just barely scratched the surface here. I mean, you guys have been doing this for fucking years, so yeah, we've just barely scratched the surface here. Tonight, it is Fringe Night, and tonight we're watching the last 3 episodes. The last 3 episodes of season 1 on Fringe, because we can't just fucking stop at the last episode. We can't. So we're going to watch 3 episodes tonight. John, this is your warning. I'm sorry. Short warning. We're going to watch 3 episodes tonight. On Wednesday, we're going to be having the Unfuck It discussion again. It'll go out live stream as usual on Twitch. Guys out there on Twitch, I'm really sorry. I couldn't open the Twitch chat, so I just wasn't able to keep up if you guys had stuff coming in, questions, etc. We're working on some technical issues on my side. But that's it for us. Thanks, guys, and we will talk to you all soon. You guys all hang out here, though, because I got some questions. We'll say goodbye to the live stream, though. Bye, Twitch.
Bye.